Welcome to MSB Podcast, a division of VJ Books featuring signed first editions from hundreds of popular authors, and that definitely includes our guest today. Jack Carr is the real deal. Carr has over 20 years in naval special warfare. He transitioned from an enlisted SEAL sniper to a junior officer leading assault and sniper teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, to a platoon commander practicing counterinsurgency in the southern Philippines, to commanding a special operations task unit in the most Iranian-influenced section of southern Iraq throughout the tumultuous drawdown of U.S. forces. Now, he's put that experience to good use in creating a series of international thrillers, the Terminal List series, which follows former Navy SEAL James Reese. His writing is so good that Lee Child, creator of Jack Reacher, says his tradecraft is so authentic the government will probably ban it, so read it while you can. And anytime Chuck Norris calls something absolutely intense, you know he is not fooling because Chuck don't fool.
That's right.
So it's not surprising to hear the news that Amazon Prime has started filming on a series based on the Terminal List, starring the Star-Lord himself, Chris Pratt. And the latest book in the series is The Devil's Hand. I didn't have a copy, so I did the next best thing, so you can see that.
There you go.
All right. This is the fourth book in the series, and James Reese has got so much on the ball. I feel we've got a character with the staying power of Jack Ryan or Jack Reacher, and that's got to feel good.
Thank you. It does. It's I grew up reading all these books, and the ones that weren't series books already, I wanted them to be. So I always wish that David Morrell wrote more in the Brotherhood of the Rose series, even though they stand each alone. Right. When you read them all together, they become a trilogy. So I always wish that some of these characters would have gone on. And of course, I read all the Tom Clancy's and all the Nelson DeMille's, David Morrell's, A.J. Quinnell's, J.C. Pollock's, Mark Olden. But I really like to get to know a character because you develop a relationship with that person, even though you're just reading and they're a fictional character. And I always knew that one day I would write novels like the ones that I was reading growing up and enjoying so much. So to have you say that about James Reese, my protagonist, means the world to me. So thank you.
Well, before we forget, let's let our listeners and viewers know where they can find you on the internet for additional information.
Well, yes. So I'm at officialjackcarr.com, and there's a blog section there where people can go, and I have reading lists where I highlight 6 books each month, talk about where I was when I read them, how it influenced me as either an author or a combat leader. And people can go into a little more detail on some of the weapons and the guns and knives and gear used in the novels. So that's at officialjackcarr.com. And then on the social channels, I am Jack Carr USA. And I'm most active on Instagram because there are of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. 3 was just too much for one person. So it's mostly Instagram and then Twitter, and then I think Facebook just reposts my Twitter.
Right. I always want to get that in up front because sometimes I forget at the end.
Perfect. Oh, and I have a new podcast. I forgot about that. Yeah, I have a podcast that launched called Danger Close: Beyond the Books with Jack Carr, and the third one just launched. But I wanted to do a podcast because I thought it was a better place to explore some of the questions that I get asked online that don't necessarily lend themselves to a nuanced answer in one sentence. So I thought this was a way to explore some of that in a way that would be beneficial to everyone.
Great. Now I have one off the wall question. I had this. I've always wanted to ask a sniper. I mean, if you can reach out and hit something at yards measured in the thousands, doesn't it make shooting a deer at 300 a little boring or unchallenging for you?
Not really. You want to you test yourself out to those ranges, not necessarily because you're going to take a shot at an animal at 1,000 or 1,600 yards, but so that when that animal is in the right position at 100, 200, 300, 400, whatever your capability and limitation is with your selected rifle and scope, that you feel confident with that range and with that weapon system. Okay. So that's important. That's why it's important to go out that far. Same thing with a bow. If you're shooting at 150 yards with a bow, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to shoot an elk at that distance. But when it's at 20, then you're a bit more confident.
And by the way, the video on your website shows you one of the gnarliest compound bows I have ever seen.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the PSE NVN 33. So that's a good one.
Right. I have to ask, was there a particular series of circumstances that led you to go with writing? I know you said your mother was a librarian. That may have
Hmm.
influenced your choice.
That's right. So I grew up with a love of reading, surrounded by books. I have quite the collection today, and many of the ones that I read growing up, almost all of them, I still have in the collection. So I always knew that I was going to serve my country in uniform, specifically as a SEAL, and that I would then one day write novels like the kinds I was reading growing up. So from a very early age, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew my two professions, and they were callings. They were callings. I didn't have to search too. I didn't have to search too much to find them or to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I just answered the call.
Yeah, well, you've answered it very well. The amount of research in this is incredible. At one point, for instance, I noticed this because I take pages of notes as I read these things, is the International Convention of Allowing Diplomatic Pouches to go through. It's common knowledge, but you actually cite that it's under Article 27.3 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, which but doesn't slow it down. It adds texture and depth to it, and that's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah, some of those things like that one in particular, like I grew up always hearing about this diplomatic pouch or the dip pouch, or even when I
Yeah.
was in the military, we talked about the dip pouch, and you could move certain things in and out of different countries using that. And at some point, I realized that it wasn't actually a pouch, and that was when I was in the military. It wasn't like growing up in the '80s. You think it's an actual pouch and it has to fit in there, just from all the spy movies and that sort of thing. At some point in the military, I realized it was not an actual pouch, and so in writing this book, I thought it was interesting that it really just has to be labeled and how it came about, where it came from. So I thought I'd share that with the reader.
I think many readers, and I'm certainly one, like to know the inside story, how things really operate, the shortcuts, the mnemonics that you use, all that stuff. And this is just crammed with this stuff. And I think the one of my favorite, because I always like people that send me to go look things up, was the line, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, which sounds like a Zen thing until you look it up and follow through. And it's about going in an urban environment and how you proceed.
It can be a few things. It can be at the tactical level. It's just going for that pistol, going for that secondary pistol, bringing it up here instead of just these jerky movements and just being all flustered trying to get that pistol out of the holster and present it to the target. It's just this: you start out slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And we were just saying that on the set here with Chris Pratt earlier today, because we have about 12 SEALs on set that are with him in this opening episode of the series, and guys that I knew, guys that I went downrange with to Iraq. They're technical advisors, they're actors. It's amazing. It was like a reunion on set. It was fantastic. But sure enough, we heard that in this scene we were just filming and finishing up this morning, and it was slow as smooth and smooth as fast.
I'm going to bounce all over the place because there's
Oh
so much
yeah, do
depth
it.
in this book. You said you were a gear guy since birth. What's the highest tech thing that you own?
Well, highest tech would be like things like this, like these earphones that I'm
Yeah.
that that linked to my computer that I didn't even know before we started this interview, things like that. So I'm not a big tech person. I mean, I use tech. Obviously, I'm on the social media channels. Look at it as that sort of thing as an opportunity to engage with people and let people know about the books and thank them, and most importantly, for taking a risk on me as a new author. But I kind of like the lower tech stuff. I like the watches that are made by hand. I like the rifles that are made by hand, old school craftsmanship. I like older vehicles, that sort of things with character. And then I use those things in my novels to tell a story about the person that uses them. Because if I see somebody in real life and I see their boots, I see their pants, I see their belt, I see their holster, and if let's say it's a 1911 in a leather holster, I can tell a lot about that person. Or I see the knife on their belt, I can tell a lot about them by who makes that knife. And how they're carrying that blade. So I do that same thing in my novels. I use this gear as tools to tell a story, the same kind that I'd be able to read if I was engaging with someone in the real world.
Yeah, and though some of us are not really knowledgeable in that, we find it gives us things to look up and go, "Ooh, that's cool."
Yeah, I
And
love it.
you sent me there for a long time. By the way, your characters are not just simple cardboards. These are people with real depth, real problems, real solutions. And I want to vote for Alec Christensen next time he's running. That's your
That's
president.
interesting. Yeah, so
Yeah.
interesting that you say that because a couple of people, so a few people have read the book thus far, and a couple of people think that he's kind of a not an antagonist, so that's the word they use, but not necessarily a good guy.
Oh,
And when I wrote him from the perspective that oh yeah, he's going to be this is a good guy. He's on the right side of things here. Although there is a little bit to him. There's a little something in there that I won't give up right away
right.
that makes him maybe be in that position for not the quote unquote right reasons, but maybe depends
Yeah.
on your outlook. But I was very I was it was just an interview the other day, and someone said that they didn't think that he was
Hmm.
a good guy, and I was kind of surprised. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, he was a fascinating character to write because he doesn't have a background similar to mine. I mean, he has a military background, but some of these politicians and lobbyists, I get to create those backgrounds from nothing because my protagonist has a background that's fairly similar to mine. So I get to get into his head and take the emotions and the feelings behind certain experiences that I was involved with downrange and apply those feelings and emotions to a completely fictional narrative. Now I can't do that with a politician or a lobbyist or somebody like that. So I have to get a little more creative
But
with those.
you do invent in this a couple of real sleazy characters, and I love that because they're not just I'm a bad guy. I'm no Boris Badenov here. These are people that are sophisticated, that've been around, they know how the world works, and they're twisting it to their own ends. So that is the senator
Yeah.
Thwaite,
Oh
and
yeah.
what is his name? The head of Masada just passed out of my head here. Um,
Yeah.
Eric Sawyer. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And people that follow the news or have read or have been paying attention the last 20 years, they might find some similarities between, particularly Sawyer to someone that's been in the news a little bit over the last 20 years.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. One of the things I appreciate is it's always dangerous to assume that the opinions expressed by the characters are those of the novelist. But it seems to me that you are a realist and an idealist at once. You have a high standard, and you also understand the world does not live up to it. And the U.S. has not always been the good guy in the past.
This is true. I'm hard on some of our senior level leaders, even if it's in a fictional narrative, because at our level, at the tactical level, while I was serving downrange, if we'd made some of the same types of decisions that our senior level leaders did, we'd probably be court-martialed, kicked out of the military, sent home from deployment. And we trust those senior level leaders to understand the nature of the conflict in which we're engaged,
Mm-hmm.
and many of them did not and made decisions that cost a lot of people their lives. So I like to be thoughtful about it, but at the same time, I like to discuss it. And the place that I do that is in these novels, and oftentimes in my posts as well, my social media
Mm-hmm.
posts. But I try to do it in a thoughtful way so that going forward we don't make those same mistakes, or maybe makes people think a little more or study their history and put the requisite thought and study into things before they just make a decision based on a 220 character tweet from someone else.
Amen, brother. I so appreciate that attitude. And the more people had it, I think we'd be a better place. Also, there's some humor in this book, and it kind of surprised me because it goes fast. I have to ask. There's at one point, and this is a minor plot point. Protagonist visits Camp David. By the way, you always told the real name of Camp David, which I'd never known before. And he sees the golf cart, and the label on it says golf cart. Right? Is that a real thing?
It is. It is.
All right.
Yeah. George Bush christened that, and I forget exactly when, but I put when in the novel. I think I said during the first. I said which term it
43.
was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
First,
yeah, that is a real thing.
yeah. And then there's in the chapter 75, Katie and Mr. Reese are having a conversation, and they go back and forth trading sports metaphors for a paragraph. And it's not huge, but it's just sweet and goes bang, 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 bang. And you think, wow, there's George and Gracie on the stage doing one of the quickies back and forth between them. So
Yeah,
I
I'm trying to develop those characters, and obviously I'm fond of both of them. So I like to develop characters through conversation, and I find that through dialogue that I get to know. Even though when I start, start with a one-page executive summary, I move that over to an outline, and then I start writing. And I find that I don't really get to know these characters until I start engaging them in conversation, in dialogue, in the thrillers. So that's why I love the dialogue piece, and that's not scripted out ahead of time in the outline. I don't have a little thing in there that says it's going to be, a fun conversation or this. I don't have any of that. But as it becomes natural to have a conversation, that's where I get to know my characters.
I have to mention some of you tip your hat to a few people that you have one of the guys reading a Brad Thor thriller. Um, you have a reference to John Wick. And I have to ask this. At the very end of chapter 79, I come from the water. Are you quoting the Toadies from 1994?
Oh, you are the second person to do that, but the other person was in my Buds class, and that's that we had a song that they played for my Buds class, and that was it. So I kind of wove that in there.
It was so
I
sweet. I
wonder how
looked
many
at it, I
people are
said,
going to catch it.
I know that's a quote, and I had to look it up because I was a DJ for many years, so too many
Oh,
songs
nice.
floating
Okay.
around in the area. So
Yep. Good catch. Good catch. Not
thank you.
many people are going to get that, I don't think.
That is great. But we're getting down to where you got to go. But I do want to ask you if there's anything that I have not touched on that you think our listeners and viewers should know.
Let's see. So the series is coming out sometime in 2022, from what I'm
Mhm.
told. Filming the first episode right now, moving into the second episode next week, and it's my first experience in Hollywood. But to have Chris Pratt starring and Antoine Fuqua directing, who did Training Day, did Tears of the Sun, Magnificent Seven, Equalizer, like these guys are absolutely incredible, and they set the tone on this set that I just came from a few minutes ago, which is why it's so at the forefront of my mind. But to see their leadership on set and see the tone that they set for everyone there, and in talking to the different people, there's 350 people that are now working during COVID on this set, based off the terminal list, and it's incredible to see all these people coming together. And when they talk about Chris and they talk about Antoine, they do so, and they've been on a lot of different projects, and they say that this one is different because these two guys are just such decent, amazing human beings. So it's very cool. So I can't wait to share that with everybody when it comes out, hopefully in 2022.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to let you go because I know you have another one of these set up. Thoroughly enjoyed. Absolutely loved it. Loved the book. Loved the series. Can't wait to see Chris Pratt stretch his muscles in a little different direction in the
That's
storyline.
right. That's
So,
right. I'm going to be surprised. He is James Reese. He's tough. I think people are going to be surprised.
all right. And we hope that you'll come back and let us talk to you when book number 5 comes out because I can't wait.
Oh, I'd love to, and I thank you so much for having me on. I love talking books. I love talking movies. I love talking popular culture and all those things and how they weave together here. So, looking forward to it. Let's do it again.
All right. Thanks so much and stay safe, my friend.
You too. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Oh, that was awesome. You were so
Oh,
good.
oh, thank you. Well, I love talking about books. I love talking about reading. I grew up with this love of books and reading, so I just love to talk about that any chance I get. So, thank
I'm
you. Thank
so
you for taking such care and reading the novels and telling people about them, because I couldn't do this without you. So, thank you.
thanks so much. Take care.
Okay, take care.